Welcome back to the Expressions of Destiny podcast. This is Jennifer. Good morning to you on this beautiful last day of November. I just wanted to come real quick and share a story. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that stories are the most important thing to me as far as training, coaching, teaching. There is nothing like a story and a real life example to help us really learn how to navigate through certain situations, know how to react instead of respond. And so I want to share with you something that happened just this past week. I had to call our cell phone company, our carrier, because we had some issues with the service, towers being out, maintenance being done. And so, of course, you can understand my concern as a business owner. If we have a business account and our lines, cell phone usage is for business, and we can't communicate with anybody, that's not a good thing. So a lot of times we'll just call and inquire about it and see when the issue is going to be fixed, why there are so many reoccurring issues. So I called them and spoke to a very nice customer service guy who was very professional. Now, if you know me, I pay attention to everything when it comes to customer service. I pay attention to the way that you speak, the way that you greet specifically, your tone, certain things that you say, the way that you hesitate when I ask a question. All of those things are going to tell me a lot about you, how much you know about the situation, and if you're going to be able to help me, or if I need to speak to somebody else, or if I need to give you additional information that will help you to help me. So I know a lot of people don't think this way, and this is where we're going to get into this topic. Customer service. It is one of the biggest topics that I always talk about. It is clearly and simply the way that we treat one another. That's it. That's the bottom line. It's our attitude, and our willingness to serve, and that shows how we treat each other. So this gentleman goes on and he's asking about the account. He's asking, to verify the account, all the information, and then he asked, what is the name of the business, which is another verification, and it was Expressions of Destiny, and which everybody knows, right? Because you're listening to this podcast, you know the name of our business. And so I'm verifying that for him, and he says, "Oh, okay, great. Let me get your account opened up here. By the way, what is it that you guys do?" Now, we get this question a lot because the name Expressions of Destiny doesn't really tell you what we do. It just tells you who we are. You might be able to read into it, if you think hard enough. Expression of Destiny. What could that possibly be? It could be anything. And so I'm sharing with him, we're creative consultants, meaning we offer creative workshops for educators, for business owners. We do employee training, customer service training, anything in that area. And he's like, "Oh, wow, okay, that's great. That's pretty awesome." And I'm like, "Yeah, we love it." And so I said, "So thank you for your wonderful customer service, because you've been nothing but kind. And I pay attention to that stuff." And he started laughing, and he said, "Well, you'll be surprised, the calls, some of the customers that we get calling in, screaming and yelling at us." And I'm thinking to myself, well, I just thanked you for your wonderful customer service. I wasn't asking about the customers themselves. I'm just commenting on how well you have treated me. So he went into this, and I assumed that thought maybe he made a connection with me because, he asked about the business. I told him what we do, customer service training, thanked him on his customer service. And so he felt that it was okay to open up and start sharing these instances with me. So I'm listening to him, and he's going on, some of these people, some of the customers call in, and they're just yelling and screaming their heads off at me. Now, I understand this because I've had it done to me when I worked in retail. And so I'm just listening again, and he's like, and they're yelling just all sorts of things. And it's actually quite comical sometimes. And these are his words. We're just sitting back here just cracking up and laughing so hard sometimes because they're just going off on a rant, like a rampage, just yelling. And so I said, well, yeah, you're going to get those kind of customers, but it's okay. It's all in, how we handle the situation. And to me, honestly, him sharing with me how they sit there and they, laugh their heads off and how it's comical and everything. All I did was follow up with, well, a lot of people may not agree with myself and, our business and the way that we train. But what we do teach and what we stand by is this one rule, is that the customer is always right, even if they're wrong. Now that means they may be wrong. They may not know that they're wrong. You may know that they're wrong because you know your policies and your procedures and you know your rules, for the company. You may know without a doubt that they are wrong. And in some cases, they may not know that. So they're just telling you what they think they know. But if you handle the situation with grace and with patience and you listen to them, let them rant, let them yell, and then try to address the issue with an open mind and an open heart and try to explain to them your policies and procedures very patiently, they'll begin to calm down because at some point they not necessarily, they may not be listening to the words that you're saying, but they're receiving it through the tone and the attitude that you have with them. Because if you come back at them firm and trying to demand and tell them what your rules and policies are without trying to understand on the other side what they may be thinking, they're not going to receive that. The situation is just going to get escalated. They're going to get tired of talking to you. They're going to want to talk to somebody else. You may not be able to provide that for them. They're going to be upset. There's just so many different scenarios that can happen here. But what I've learned, especially from being in that customer service role in retail, specifically at a grocery store, and I've shared this many times, is that every time I had a customer come up and start screaming and yelling at me, which has happened many, many times, I always stood there very patiently and listened to them. And when they got done, I always said, but you know what, I want to do my best to try to help you with whatever this is. And a lot of times, it wasn't even anything that I had done. It was something that they were upset about because of someone else that they had talked to, maybe something else that they had found or figured out. It may have been a scenario that had nothing to do with me, but I happened to be their target. Why? Because I work for the company. I'm an employee just like everybody else. So if they're yelling at one employee, they're yelling at the other. But the way that I was able to handle it and stand there and just have grace and listen to them, every single time that I got done with the customer, they were calm, they were listening, and they were always saying, thank you so much for helping me with the situation. I know it's not your fault. Those words are very important because in that scenario, I was able to shift their mind and their thinking to remember this girl has nothing to do with why I'm yelling, except for that she works for the company that I'm upset with. You know, they would always say, I know it's not your fault. I apologize. I'm so sorry for yelling at you. That is how a customer service situation should be handled and should end, is with the customer feeling like even if you didn't completely solve their problem, you did everything that you possibly could to help them. Even if you had incentives to give them, you couldn't fully do what it was that they were asking you for, but they had incentives for you. I was frustrated at the fact that my phone lines weren't working properly. I'm thinking I could be losing business. I could be losing communication with certain customers, potential new, clients, whatever it is. And this goes for any company. But when I talk to the people at our carrier, every single time, if they're not able to handle the situation because it's out of their control, I mean, what are you going to do about a tower that is down or scheduled maintenance or whatever? But they always end the call with, how about I give you some type of credit for the inconvenience. I can give you $25 on your bill. To me, that's enough to say, you know what, they're really trying to accommodate even the time that I didn't have my lines up and running. I couldn't make outgoing calls. I couldn't get incoming calls. They were willing to take $25 off my bill. Okay, I'm happy with that. I still hope that they do fix the situation so that we don't keep encountering these service problems. But for the meantime, they did whatever they could in their power, right? Because they probably have people that are over them and they're limited to what they can do, but they were able to offer that particular thing, in which this young man did. And he was still really great about his customer service with me when I had that issue. But just hearing the other side of it reminded me of those different scenarios that I personally went through, thinking that, wow, I could have screamed and yelled back at these people. Trust me, I had coworkers that would go out there and cuss back at the customer and say, I don't deserve for you to be talking to me like this. I work hard too. I mean, they would just lay out all of their issues when our job is not to try to be equal with the customer. Our job is to serve the customer. And that is it. You are getting paid to do a job. You're getting paid to fulfill the things that are on your job description. You signed up for it. And so you have to do what it is that is asked of you. There are a lot of things that people will ask me to do that I don't want to do, but if you're paying me, I do them because you told me to do them, because I've been told to do it. Now, if it's something that, is crazy and should not be done, because it has to do with something that is immoral, illegal, whatever it is, obviously you stand up for that. But I may not want to do something one day, and somebody will come up to me and ask me to do it. I do it because I've been asked to do it. That is my job. And so I think it's about time that we get back to, and it's really sad, but that generation that we knew, with our parents, our grandparents, their parents, the greats, the greats and greats, where we begin to operate out of care, concern, grace, and understanding, that whatever our purpose is in that position, we need to fulfill it the best of our ability. We have lost that in this generation. And it seems like a lot of times there's a lot of selfishness. There's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of unnecessaries, and we're not teaching and training our employees to put that aside when they step into that role for the day, for those 8 hours, 4 hours, whatever their shift is. They are now to serve the customer in whatever capacity that they need to, without getting emotional, frustrated, irritated, angry. None of that belongs in there. It's our job to do our job. And on top of that, if you really love what you're doing, it wouldn't be a problem. But that's a whole other episode for a whole other day. And we've touched on it before. But if you're in your purpose, you have no problem doing it because you love it so much. There are a lot of people that are stuck in positions that they have absolutely no passion for. And it's really sad for me to see. And a lot of times, if I have an opportunity to talk to those people, if I am sitting right beside them, and this is something that you can do as well, but if you have an opportunity to be right there with that person and you know that they are not happy, do everything that you can to help them find that happiness. Start asking questions. Ask them, what is it that you do love? What are some of the tasks that you've done in the past that you really enjoyed? What are some of the things, your passions that you love to do outside of work? The majority of the time, that ties into what it is that we end up doing or becoming, because it should always be something that we have a love for. If I love gardening, I wouldn't have a problem working at a nursery, So we think about those, we have to think about those things, and not very many people do that anymore. So if you have an opportunity to encourage someone that is unhappy in their position to be able to shift and move into a new season of doing something that they absolutely love, it'll take some work for them to find it. But when they do find it, they'll be so grateful and so much more at peace. Then we wouldn't have an issue with customer service. And it's that simple, but it's that simple to understand, but it's getting them there. And so I just wanted to drop this on you and on y'all today, whoever's listening. Think about these things. If it's you, find that passion and that love for whatever it is and do it. If it's someone that you know, invest in them. Invest your time, invest your encouragement, your love, your support, your compassion, and help them discover what it is that they want to do with the rest of their life so that they can be a blessing to others. And so I just want to leave you right there with that today. I will see you next time on the Expressions of Destiny podcast. Thank you again for joining me, and I pray that this blessed you. Have a wonderful day.